Don't be afraid to lift up seats when you are at a store. It's not weird. In this chapter, we're gonna talk about what is vintage, where you can find it, and how to inspect it before you bring it into your home. Good vintage is something that's unique, that has good quality, and it has lasting value. It's something that not only you will enjoy, but can be enjoyed for generations. When we're talking about vintage, what we mean is anything that's 26 years old or more in general. With antiques, that's something that's about 100 years old. When I was a kid, we always shopped for everything in thrift stores and garage sales. I thought that that was just how you bought things. And as I grew older, I learned that there is a whole ecosystem to vintage shopping and lots of different places to find lots of different things. I love to stop whenever I see something on the side of the road, and I really have a penchant for anything that's weird. I don't want anybody to be intimidated about buying vintage pieces and thinking that they won't go in your home because the rest of your home isn't vintage. In fact, I think that it's necessary to have both vintage and non-vintage in your home because the contrast will make everything more beautiful. When you are starting your vintage journey, there are a lot of different places that you can find good vintage and good antiques. The first place is at a thrift shop. The great thing about thrift shops is that it's a hunt. It's fun. You might find something that's really valuable, but it takes a long time to sift through all of the garbage, and you have to know what you're looking for. When dealing with thrift stores, it's better to go to the same thrift store often than to find out the best thrift store, whatever that is, because the inventory changes constantly. In a place like a storefront or a flea market, it's really great because there's someone who is knowledgeable about vintage antiques and they've already done the sifting for you. They've found something that they thought was valuable and they're bringing it to you, which means it cuts out a lot of time. The negative of going to those places is going to cost you more money. Recently, a great place to find vintage is online marketplaces. You can use search terms if you're looking for a specific item, like coffee table or dining table. And another great thing about that is that you're usually buying it from the owner of the piece who might have some history or be able to tell you the story of where they got it or who used to own it. I always name my furniture when I buy it from somebody, and I name it from the person I got it from. So for instance, I have a buffet that's named Ruth because it was this lady's Ruth, and my kids call it the Ruth Buffet. So having a human story connected with each piece that you have makes it just that much more beautiful. But the negatives to that are that you're competing with everybody else who gets to see the item, which means you really have to be on your toes if you find something that's great and a good price. And it's really hard to tell what is good just from a picture. And one of my favorite places to shop for vintage and antiques are estate sales. The best part about those is that you get to see where the furniture has lived and you can judge the quality of the item based on all the other furniture in the person's house or even how beautiful the house is. The bad part about estate sales is that if you want to get a good deal, you have to be there really early in the morning, and chances are the dealers that live in your town are going to get to the good stuff before you do. All of these places are really good places to find treasure, and I'm going to teach you how to inspect the pieces that you find when something catches your eye so that you'll know whether it's valuable or not. Okay, so let's say you're in the wild hunting for vintage and you find something that you like that catches your eye. The first thing you have to do is inspect it. There are 5 simple steps that will work for almost any vintage piece that will help you know whether it's a good vintage piece or not. And that's the condition, the weight, the maker's mark, the age, and the quality of the piece. So the first thing I'm going to look for is the condition of the piece. That's usually pretty obvious. I'm going to look to see whether it's dirty or broken. I don't see any dirt on this piece, but when I look at the cushions, I can tell that they're old, kind of warped, and dirty. Don't be afraid of dirty cushions, especially ones like these that are really easy to reupholster. It might seem silly, but the next thing you should do is see how heavy the piece is. All you have to do is lift it up, see if it's heavy or not. And that, a lot of times, will tell you whether it's a good quality piece made with real good quality materials or whether it's a cheaper mass-produced piece. Without lifting up, I won't know whether it's made out of a hollow metal that's more cheaply made or made out of a very solid, heavy material like this iron. Okay, so it's good condition. It's heavy. Those are all good things. The next thing we're going to look for is whether it has a label or a maker's mark. If it does, you're in luck because you can research whether that's a good brand or not. And in my opinion, the fact that it has a label, a signature, or a maker's mark tells me that whoever made it thought so much of it that they were willing to put their name to it, which means that it's probably a good quality piece. Usually it's on the underside of an item, especially with chairs, it's usually under the seat cushion. So I'm gonna lift this up and look. Don't be afraid to lift up seats when you are at a store. It's not weird. This one does not have a maker's mark. I can tell that it's been reupholstered many times because there's a lot of staples, and I can tell that this is low quality wood that has some water damage, and that it has these marks here, which tell me that it's probably not the original seat cushion to this chair, which is great because this is a really low quality cushion, and the frame of the chair indicates that it's a high quality frame. So that's good news for me. The next thing you wanna do is try and identify how old a piece is. Now, just because something's old doesn't mean necessarily that it's of better quality, but you can guess that if something is old and it's in this good condition, then it's lasted this long already and it'll probably last you a lot longer. So there are lots of different markers of age. For these particular chairs, I'm gonna look for patina, which just means whether the material of this chair is so high quality that when it ages, it makes it more beautiful. That's what patina is. It's like showing wear on a piece, but wear that's beautiful. The style of these chairs tell me that it's some sort of modern or postmodern era, which means that it was probably made in the 70s or 80s. Another indicator of age is what screws are used in the chair. Now in this chair, there aren't any, let me see. Yeah, there are no screws in this chair. But I can tell that the way that the metal is welded together is something that was hand done. There's lots of different solder marks here and here and here. So I know that somebody actually physically bent this iron and then soldered it together here, which tells me that it was made by a craftsman and not made by a machine. So I can spot in these chairs that there are differences that tell me that it's handmade. Everything isn't perfect, it's imperfect, and with vintage, imperfections are a good thing. When you put them together, I can tell that the pieces of iron are not exactly the same in each little squiggle. You can notice that this one is more elongated and this one is right here. This and this are not exactly the same length. This circle is not the same place. So once you've trained your eye to look for those things, it becomes really easy to spot what is a handmade quality piece. All right, we've done our 5-point vintage inspection on these chairs, and in my mind, these have passed. I love them, they're unique, and they're great quality. Next, I'm gonna talk about deal breakers, which are things that even though you might have fallen in love with a vintage item, there might be a deal breaker that tells you it's gonna be too much trouble to bring them home. When you're buying vintage pieces, there's always gonna be a little bit of wear and tear, a little bit of patina. Some things are easy fixes, some things make it more beautiful, and some things are really hard to fix and you should probably stay away from. If you find a beautiful vintage or antique rug, don't be intimidated by the fact that it's dirty. Cleaning it is not that hard, and there are also places you can take it to get it cleaned for you. Let's talk about upholstery on chair seats. If something is like this chair where this upholstery piece is just stapled on the back of a piece of wood, I'm never intimidated by the quality of that upholstery because it's such an easy fix. It's a tiny amount of upholstery, which means it won't be expensive, and anybody can do it with just a simple staple gun. This is like a 30-minute job. You cut an upholstery piece to size, you fold it over and staple it with just a simple staple gun that you can find at any hardware store. So that's a good thing to remember whenever you're looking at dining room chairs or kitchen chairs that aren't sewn together upholstery, but just stapled on the back. When you're looking at a vintage item, there's always gonna be wear on the piece. There's good wear and there's bad wear. Here's an example of good wear. When it's good, we like to call it patina. And in this bowl, we see a lot of beautiful patina. So we call it patina when it has aged the way it was meant to age. And with this bowl, it's certainly the case. The patina in this bowl, you can tell from the areas of lightness and darkness. A lot of stuff was in the middle of the bowl and not a lot of stuff was on the edge of the bowl. So you get that really chromatic, almost color to the wood. I see reds, pinks, dark browns, light browns, and even some grays just in one little piece of wood, which is so beautiful. This is another bowl. It's another old bowl, and it definitely has patina. You can see sun damage and age. You can almost see right through the wood because there's so much either water or other damage on the bottom of the bowl. And on this side, if you look closely, you can see these little tunnels. It looks like tiny little tunnels in the wood. And whenever you see this, either on antique furniture or in old wood bowls, it tells you that there was a previous infestation of a wood-boring insect. So unless you know how to tell whether it's an active infestation versus not an active infestation, I would stay away from anything that has these little tunnels inside of it because you might be bringing wood-boring insects into your home, which you don't want. This is a super beautiful vintage piece. The real value in this piece is that it's made out of wood. It has this beautiful burl wood on the front and nice clean lines, which tells me it's a mid-century piece. Unless you know how to restore mid-century pieces or unless you know how to refinish wood, I would stay away from a piece like this that has this much wear on the top of it. In order to fix this, you would have to remove all of the top layer of this wood and then restain it in a way that matches the rest of the cabinet, which is not an easy DIY job. So if you see something that has this much surface wear, I would stay away from it unless you want to invest in hiring a professional to fix it. So I don't want you to be afraid of things that are just dirty, like dirty rugs. Those can be cleaned. And I don't want you to be afraid of easy fixes like seat upholstery like this. And I definitely don't want you to be afraid that something just looks old. That makes something more valuable and more beautiful. But there are some deal breakers that are labor intensive or expensive to repair. And that would be anything that's a structural damage to the piece, if it's wobbly or it's not working properly, something like this cabinet that needs to be totally refinished, or anything like that old wooden bowl that has insect damage. If you follow these steps, you'll be able to get your foot in the door of sifting through all the junk, finding the good stuff, and creating a home that not only is more beautiful, but has pieces that will last for generations.